Hello, this is a follow-up to the photography tip of the week number 34 on twilight photography. I'm your host Phil Morris, the Time and Time photographer. I've received some questions on what steps I took to process this particular image in Adobe Lightroom. Of particular interest is how I colorized the areas that were affected by the flash. I'm going to take you through all the steps in processing this image. The first thing I do in the develop module here is I'll scroll down to the bottom and I'll go to the camera calibration section. Now for this sort of image I know that I want to either use the landscape mode or profile or the portrait profile. And to tell you, I think the landscape profile gives me that punch that I'm really looking for. Now let's scroll back up to the top here and we're going to go with the white balance. Now there's really nothing in this scene that's really usable for this white balance. So what I'm going to do is I like seeing what auto gives me, and of course that looks absolutely horrid. Auto works so well in so many photos, but twilight photography it just does not work. So if we go through, take a look at flash, that looks pretty reasonable. Let's take a look at daylight. Daylight gets me closer. In fact, I think I'm going to run my temperature up a little bit there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now let's go to the exposure settings. I often hit auto on this as a starting point, and actually that's a pretty decent starting point. I don't have anything that's blown out in my highlights, and my blacks are not blown out, but in this case having that silhouette there, we've got a lot of blacks there, which really helps set the mood for this image. So let's see here. The only other thing that I'm going to do is I've noticed that my printers often print images very dark, so I'm going to run up my exposure probably about one stop, right about there. Now that background looks as rich as it did when I took the picture, and plus you can see the senior here. She's got that nice flash on her, and she looks really out of place. But before we do that, we're going to go to these present settings, and in this case I'm going to type in the settings that I found that often work best for my camera. Now you can try these on for yours, but I found that when I use these settings for another camera, they just don't look quite right. I've looked at this time and time on my camera, and these settings just hit it right for what I need to up my vibrance and the saturation of the colors, and that clarity just really helps make things stand out, and when you look at the image real close. So that's pretty much it for the standard settings. Now what we want to do is we want to get into the finalizing of this. We need to colorize the senior and this grassy area right here and do our final crop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my brush, and that's about the right size of brush that I want. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my color, and you can choose any color on this gradient bar, and you hold down your mouse button, and you can pick any of these colors. But if you keep the mouse button held down, you can pull out and you could go into your image, and I'm going to pick this orange up here. Let's close that window off, and now we need to pick a spot to start this. When you click on the on your image, it's going to leave a dot there, which is kind of your hover dot, so you can go back and take a look at your mask. You need to put that in a reasonable spot. You don't want to necessarily put it on her face because you might want to zoom in on that area later. In this case, I'm going to put it on the center of her body, and I'm going to start painting. Now, I don't have to be too careful because I've got auto mask turned on, and you can see that over on the right hand side. And I'm going to paint all these areas that were affected by the flash, and it will give it that nice orangey look. I'm going to let up. There's my hover dot. If I hold the dot over there, I can take a look at the mask, and it looks like I've got a little bit more to do on the leg and a bit on the bench. So let's do that. We will paint that. We'll make sure that's nice and good. Hover that again. Alright, that's good. Now the foreground doesn't look out of place from the background because you don't have that white flash. So the only thing we have to do now is to crop. Now I know that I want to print this out as an 8x10, so I'm going to select 8x10 here, and I can choose to slide this pretty much anywhere I want. This tree, I don't want the tree over here. I thought it was going to be a nice element, but it really isn't. So I'm going to set that right there on the edge of the tree. And then I'm going to pull down a little bit. I'm going to use the rule of thirds to put my line right through my senior here. And yeah, I find it's better to put it through the face than it is through the body in this sort of case. Let's hit enter. And there is my final crop, my final image. And all I can do now is thank you for watching this follow-up to the photography tip of the week. And once again, my name is Phil Mars from timeandtime.com.